They have been called Prairie Skyscrapers, sentinels of the prairie, and even prairie cathedrals. They have towered over the Alberta countryside for over 100 years, giving a sense of purpose and stability to the farming communities that dot the landscape. Their very presence announced to the world, "Look at us. This is where we work, play, live."
When you really think about it, you know, like not that many years ago, there was an elevator in Greencourt. You know, there was 3 here in Mayerthorpe. There was one at Rochford, or 2 in Rochford. There was 2 in San Gudo. That one in Chair Hill, that P&H at Chair Hill. You know, and they were all on that line.
Each elevator proudly displayed the community's name on signs that for sheer size must have outmuscled the biggest cities on earth. This, it trumpeted to the passers-by, is our home. The area around Mayerthorpe was a relative latecomer to all this action. Situated as it is 120 kilometres northwest of Edmonton, the first settlers did not arrive until just before the First World War.
Oh yes, I went to Rochford one day, and I had to come, my dad wanted me to come to Mayerthorpe for something, and there they were laying the steel with the station. They had a station built already, and the railroad with the boys was laying the ties and driving the spikes in to hold the rail.
What year?
Oh, I don't know, it might have been 1902, or 1902, or 22.
1922.
Yeah.
When
The Alberta Wheat Pool. This was built, the one I started in was built in 1929, and they had an elevator before that burnt down, and then they built one in 1929, and Bill Abraham run that from 1929 until 1949, and then I run it from 1949 to 1976. So in 1966, they built this new elevator in Mayerthorpe.
No, my brother Fred helped build this elevator.
Yeah?
Yeah, and he's passed away now, my brother, yeah. I can't say when that elevator was built, but all I know is my brother, he wanted a job, and he got a job having spikes. He pounded several hundred pounds of spikes into that elevator, which was a lot. And he said it was terrible. He said when he first started to go up, because he says it was scaring. But towards the end, I don't know how long he worked there. I can't remember that, because he's gone now. But he said that he got so used to the heights and didn't bother him so much, because you went up at 2 inches at a time, planks.
Considering their imposing presence, the elevators were surprisingly simple structures.
Well, when I started, it was just a small elevator and an annex. That elevator was built in 1929.
They consisted of the drive shed, which served to protect the unloading of the grain from the weather.
When I come here, it was still a gas engine.
underneath the office.
Yep, and a big water tank in the office. I think 500 gallons of water. You know, we didn't have to heat the office until the engine quit running so much.
What was the water?
Well, the thing is,
It was a steam engine?
the water was hot and heated the office.
Yeah, but was it a steam engine?
No, the cooling system.
You mean gasoline, don't you?
Yeah, the gasoline engine, and there was a cooling system. It circled through this big tank, and this tank kept the engine cool. Then after a while, they got real smart, and they put a radiator on it. I saw it at Blue Ridge. We never had it here, but at Blue Ridge, they put a radiator on this engine, cut a hole in the wall, and then drew the air from outside with a fan and cooled this radiator. Up to that time, they were using 500 gallons of water. And in the winter time, you had to drain the oil out of the engine so it wouldn't freeze up.
So they didn't deliver in the winter then?
Pardon?
Didn't deliver in the winter then?
Yeah, they delivered, but you see, we didn't run it that much then, and the engine sitting downstairs. When the fire went out, she got cold and froze up the block. And I know my brother was a grain buyer too, and he froze up his engine and cracked the block on it. So, but that was the thing, that big water tank. And then after a while, we got a little smarter again, and we put wax on top of this tank, you know, because it used to vaporize a lot of that water. And we'd put wax on it, and then the water wouldn't vaporize from the big tank.
The bins served not just to store, but to separate the contents.
Well, the elevator would have about 15 bins, separate bins, yeah. Some would hold 1,500 bushels. I think the biggest one in Searle was 2,000 bushels. The side bins and the overhead bins would hold anywhere from 1,000 to 1,200 to 1,500 bushels. And so you try to, when you had malting barley, you made sure you kept it separate. If you brought in your grain, I have to keep it separate. So when we shipped it, you'd get paid for your grain, and I couldn't, shouldn't contaminate it with somebody else's. Well, you have a pit on both sides of the leg, and the leg is right to the top of the elevator is a box frame with a belt, and the belt is a foot wide or whatever, and it's got a bunch of cups on it bolted on, and the motor sits on top, or if it's electric power, it sits on top. If it was the engine, it was down below, and you would get everything running, and you'd open the gate, and the grain would go up the leg, then go down the spout, and then you could move the spout. You had a dial on the with cable, and you could set your every bin separate. So you could set, if you wanted to go into bin 1 or bin 7, you could move it around. And you had to make sure that it was on the right bin, so you didn't mix your grain. But that's what the leg is.
The scale room is where the grain was weighed and graded. Life in small-town Alberta centered and prospered around the elevator.
When I come here, there was 3 elevators.
And they were?
Searle elevator. Before that, it was the Federal, wasn't it?
I don't know.
Yeah, Federal, I think.
It was called?
But it was the Searle when I come.
And you said there were 3 elevators. The
So then the wheat pool bought out the Searle. I don't know what year though.
It was Federal. Searle was amalgamated with Federal Grain, and Federal Grain then sold out in 1971 or early 72 to Alberta Wheat Pool.
The elevator was a must at that time, and because you could haul your grain to the elevator. Today, it's a different story altogether.
Yeah, the center one was knocked down. It was still there though, but it finally, when we had it, we knocked it down.
So the pool bought that?
Yeah, they knocked both the Federal elevators down. And they moved the annex from the first Federal, down close to the station. They put that on the railroad track and moved it down to the elevator.
I think I remember seeing
Yeah, and I was talking to the guys when they were moving it, and they said they had to put soap on the track to move it, to slide it, But there's only one kind of soap they could use. That was ivory soap. That's the only soap that would work, they said.
Oh, gosh. So they greased the rails.
But they slid her right down and set her up beside the big elevator then.
Much of the economic and social well-being of Mayerthorpe's residents was tied to these grain-eating beasts.
Well, it brought every farmer in the area to the elevator because everybody had either a truckload or 2 truckloads of grain. And before that, they'd come with horses, and there was lineups, quite a ways down till you got them unloaded. But I'd have 20 truckloads waiting some morning when I was here, waiting to get through the elevator. And so every farmer would come in, and of course, to unload their grain, I'd issue a check. Away they'd go. They get paid on the spot, and they'd go downtown and pay their bills or buy their groceries. So it was very important. Yeah, very important to the local farmers.
Well, I think at that time it was. That is before the oil come in here, and I think that agriculture had a pretty big say in the community then.
Well, the good ones was when you come to Mayerthorpe and unload your grain and you go to the beer parlor and have a beer or two and come out and get your team and go on home again.
Oh.
And if you didn't buy what you were supposed to buy in the store, then you got a bawling out.
With 4 horses, and it was it was a real trip because we never got to town very often, and Dad custom hauled in the wintertime, and it was mainly on Saturday when he took a load of grain to Mayerthorpe, so if he felt at ease by taking me along, I would go and walking half the way behind the sleigh. It was normally cold in those days. The roads weren't snowplowed or anything, and the sleigh had to go up and down over the snowdrifts, and we walked behind to keep warm. Mr. Abraham was the manager in Mayerthorpe in those years.
Oh yes, it was a big day. And your team was tired and they got here, you put them in the livery barn. Billy Richardson had the livery barn, and it cost you 2 bits to feed your horses. And you got a little hay and whatnot. He'd help you hook and unhook and put them in.
Oh, I imagine it was, because there was only livestock and grain when I come here. There was no oil at all up in here then. I think the oil business started around Leduc in 47, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's right.
So there was nothing here yet. So this was definitely, agriculture was what was keeping this town going.
I also came with Florence Krause, who hauled all the grain from their farm, as far as I know. She'd stop. She really wanted my mother to go with her for company, but she'd take me if there wasn't anyone else available. And she had great big raincoat, enormous men's raincoat, and a big toque on. But when she got to Mayerthorpe and got her grain sold, off come the raincoat and off come the toque, and she had a real smart hat in a shopping bag. And she changed her men's boots for nice velvet overshoes, and she was just as smart as if she stepped off the train to do her shopping.
Well, you paid up your bills and you always saved a little bit to buy beer.
So, when you're talking about putting things on a bill, did the community carry the farmers?
Well, some of it, if they were sure that you would pay your bill, they'd give you a little credit. And if you wasn't sure, you didn't get credit.
The elevator man was a central figure in all of this.
Yeah, and it got to the point where the company I worked for would allow me to take samples of oldie barley. If I thought they were good enough for malt, I could approve it here. So then I would take 400 bushels from you and 500 from somebody else and 600 over there. I pooled them all together, put it on a storage ticket, and shipped the carload that way. So I did everything I could to help the farmers. And another example would be if you had number 3 wheat, number 3 northern, and 5 wheat, number 5 wheat, I would blend it together, and if it made a 4, you would make a lot more money. Instead of selling it for 3 and 5, if you sold it as 4 northern, you'd make more money. So I used to do that for farmers.